to weight or decide and become more healthy, but it's easier said than done, isn't it?
That is true. Look, weight loss is a big area. There's high commercial interest, and therefore a lot of fad diets and dubious claims. There's on average 2 diet books published per week.
Really? 2 per week?
Yeah, 2 per week. That's a massive amount of diet books. Really? And some of them claim to be revolutionary diets. And, if any one of them was a revolution, it'll be the last one published. But it's a complex area, and there will never be one diet book or dietary regime that would be published that if everyone on the planet follows, they'll be in great health. It's just not the way it is. We could talk about it for numerous shows, but the bottom line is to eat the right diet for your specific metabolism, along with exercise and along with lifestyle modifications. So that's it in a nutshell. To determine the right diet for your metabolism, it's complex, and that's why there'll never be one book or one diet that if everyone follows, they're going to be in great health and weight and so on. It's because we're all different, and we have unique metabolisms, and it's generally categories, but you have to kind of work out what category you're in or what type of metabolism you have and how your body responds to certain food groups and macronutrients. And for that you should consult a nutritionist who's trained in working out what type of metabolism you have and prescribing a diet for that. So
is that some people can eat absolutely anything and they'll still stay nice and thin, and then others of us, if we eat or maybe eat too much fatty foods, too many sweets and biscuits or whatever, and that we just pile on the weight?
Yes and no. There's other things at play. Some people have glandular imbalance and hormone imbalance that, if 2 people sat down and at the same, I suppose, caloric intake in one meal, one would tend to store more energy as fat, and the other one might burn it up. So again, metabolism could be faster.
Are there people out there then, Gabriel, that eat really healthily but still can't lose weight, and they're that little bit overweight?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I see it quite a lot. So there's more to it than just follow this diet and so on. Like some people, I suppose we'll do a whole show on this metabolic typing and so on, but just to scratch the surface, some people do well on a diet relatively higher in, say, carbohydrates and lower in fat and proteins relatively, and then that's one side of the scale. And then there's other people who do really well on a diet relatively high in fats and proteins and relatively low in carbohydrates. So that's the 2 extremes of the scale. Now there's some people who are mixed, who can do very well on relatively mixed amount of macronutrients, and they're probably the type of people these days who tend to kind of not put on weight or tend to just graze through. But it's and that's what the important aspect is to work out what type of metabolism you have. And I use a system at the clinic, works really well. But it's very important to work out what type of diet is right for you. And the origins of it is quite complex, probably based on our gene pool and how we've evolved to whatever foods were available in our environment over many hundreds of years. So a lot of our metabolic and biochemistry systems have evolved on evolution over hundreds of years, and in the last 100 years we could say that our food chain has changed immensely from what it was prior to that. Prior to foods coming into Ireland, we'd say the diet that we had traditionally in Ireland was very different than what it is today.
It is very hard to know what to eat that's right. I mean, you'd be someone that don't necessarily like foods coming out of a tin, for example, would you?
Well, I don't like processed foods, and generally it's processed foods in tins, packages, cans.
And what about frozen foods, microwave foods?
Yeah, it's big area. There's some foods that freeze and hold their nutrient content. It'll never be the same as fresh foods prepared without being frozen and so on.
And what about low fat this, low fat that? You know, heat up this dinner, but it's a low fat aimed at people who are losing weight, and pop it in the microwave, and there you have your dinner in a few minutes, and it's got the correct amount of calories and all that. Well, what do you think of foods like that?
It's rubbish. It's all rubbish. They're all fad, based on fad diet principles and a kind of a starvation regime. And
so would you be a person that's saying there's nothing like buying your fresh vegetables, your fresh meat, your fresh fruit, and preparing your dinner and cooking it? I suppose what some people would describe as nearly the old-fashioned way, either in the saucepans on the range or on the cooker or wherever it is.
Definitely. Ideally, if you prepare your meals yourselves from natural raw materials, real foods. Unfortunately, the way it's gone today in society, it's too fast and people don't have time and so on, so we tend to go for convenience foods. But that's why I try and structure a diet specific for the person that comes to see me, based on their lifestyle. But ideally, definitely freshly prepared meals, prepared in a more traditional way, like our stews and our broths that we made years ago are brilliant. They contain an abundance of nutrients that we just didn't account for back then,
Yeah, and organic foods seem to be that little bit more expensive. But for people who are buying fresh fruit and vegetables, and obviously most households are working to a budget, and especially in the climate that we have at the moment, if they're fresh, sure, does it have to be organic? Not necessarily, does it? If you are working to
there's kind of like a scale. I think organic is best because there's less pesticides, chemical herbicides and fungicides used on them, and therefore they have less toxic stuff on them, put it that way. Now, after that, definitely locally grown fresh stuff is best. You can't beat it, you can't beat local stuff because it hasn't travelled for a half a week or a week on a plane or wherever, and so it's come, and it's not long from when it comes out of the ground and gets to you. Plus it goes through a similar type of climate that you're experiencing, and there's a lot to be said about that at a real fine level.
So buy Irish fruit and veg where you possibly can.
and buy Sligo stuff where you possibly can, and Donegal stuff, get
the Leitrim stuff too.
And Leitrim stuff too.
You better throw them in all three counties.
Definitely local stuff to the northwest, put it that way, and would be the best. And ideally, again, if you can grow your own in the back garden, better again.
All the better.
But so there is a scale. I think organic's best, then fresh, and then after that, if you can't get it, then say maybe frozen stuff, but it'll never be as good as the fresh stuff. There's certain aspects of weight, just talking about weight loss, and there's one that's relevant to all, and that's insulin resistance, and this is an important one, and one I'd like to talk about a bit. Let me point out that having high body weight is not the problem. Having increased body fat is the problem. And in fact, having increased muscle mass and a high body weight is actually beneficial. The research is quite clear. When our body fat percentage is too high, it leads to a whole cascade of effects that increase the risk of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, inflammation, and virtually every chronic degenerative disease. So there should be a great focus on helping people get rid of excess body fat. There's an epidemic of insulin resistance now in Ireland today, and insulin it's an important hormone that not only regulates sugar, but when the insulin binds to receptor sites in our cells, it opens up channels that allow not only glucose but other nutrients enter the cells. So insulin sensitivity is a very important goal for good health, and we can achieve this through good diet, exercise, and the right lifestyle choices. If you don't have that insulin sensitivity, it increases your risk of being overweight and developing type 2 diabetes, and suffering all the consequences of, or that this condition creates. An interesting concept on the biochemistry is that, and it's shared by many experts, is that human biology gives us a propensity towards weight gain. So why is that? Well, because nature wants us to survive, so nature has built into our physiology a very unique system that we can overcome food, or that we overconsume food when food is plentiful. The more we eat excess of our requirements, the more it leads to a dampening of the hormone insulin, which also leads to abdominal fat gain, increased number of fat cells, increased size of abdominal fat cells, and this leads to the secretion of compounds that further dampens the effect of insulin.
It was just when we were all saying, oh my goodness, I can't get a nice flat tummy, or...
Yeah, true. Some people tend to kind of hold it around their tummy, and they're probably...
That's every woman's nightmare, I think.
Yeah,
the tummy.
They'll probably be more, I suppose, genetically geared towards developing insulin resistance. So it's something they need to... keep an eye on. But like, I hear very commonly that, you know, people come see me, I have an uncontrollable appetite, you know, and what's that about? So first off, and you were talking about low fat and stuff, we know that dieting doesn't work, deprivation doesn't work. However, a good, well thought out, individualized program can work great. In essence, what happens, we try to deprive our body from nutrition, and what happens is our brain senses that it's starving, so what it does is release very complex compounds that causes us to eat. Our brain requires a few key nutrients, oxygen and glucose, the main ones, and we have very strong built-in mechanisms that ensure adequate supply of these two nutrients to the brain. With this in mind, when one develops insulin resistance, there might be adequate glucose outside the cells, but because the cell isn't responding to the insulin inside the brain cell, there's a relative deficiency. So the brain thinks it's starving, and it stimulates us to eat food high in sugar, which is fast energy and stuff. Hence we develop sugar cravings and stuff. And it's very common for people to say that they need something sweet after dinner. Their energy lags, you know, maybe within the hour after lunch, and they're nearly asleep on their computer unless they have something sweet, like a little pick-me-up or whatever. And this is why. So if you ask some people, say, just to highlight it, if you ask some people to hold their breath, some people could hold their breath longer than others, but eventually everyone's going to start breathing at some stage. It's impossible to kill yourself by holding your breath, because very powerful survival mechanisms will overpower your strong will. And the exact same, that's an analogy to what it's like trying to lose weight or trying to control energy based on these fad diets, because you know, the body's going to keep going until it's nourished. So the key is nourishing foods and so on. So going on these diets further compounds the situation, because you know, you have a strong willpower, but it can't overcome the very primordial, very deep-rooted survival mechanisms within the brain, designed to preserve health. So what happens is people goes on the diet and end up weighing more at the end of it than when they're started out, and this is actually can also be associated with certain brain problems like anxiety, mood swings and depression. It's, you know, people who go on diets, or even if they're not, if they just kind of half eat low fat foods and these processed foods, they tend to have food cravings a lot, and it's something that, you know, people have a problem with. They crave a lot of sugar and sometimes savoury stuff. But with the sugar cravings and food cravings in general, it's generally to do with a relative drop in blood sugar levels that causes the cravings. But it can also cause anxiety and irritability and poor concentration, poor cognitive dysfunction, and so on. So the key, I guess, is to regulate your blood sugar levels. Everyone should do this. Everyone should take note of this. And when you do, you get over the whole appetite, or you get the whole appetite thing under control, and you feel better. you sleep better, you have more energy, and weight normalizes over time. And if you get the blood sugar under control, you get your appetite under control, and weight loss can become somewhat effortless, and people naturally migrate towards healthy eating.
Healthier eating. Okay, we have a quick break to take, and we have a lot of questions coming in, and we'll go through those as well just after this short break.
Sligo has YMAX, but have you? To be honest, I think you should. Look, you can stay with Aircom and pay €25 a month for line rental, or you can get Imagine YMAX and cut your Aircom bill in half. The broadband is better and cheaper, the calls are 50% cheaper, and they don't charge line rental. YMAX is here, Sligo. Hang up on Aircom and call Imagine YMAX now on 1890 929 006. That's 1890 929 006, or go to imagine.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
Nairn Blinds scrappage deal continues. Return your old blinds and get new blinds at a fraction of the cost. Quality blinds made locally at unbeatable prices. Nairn Blinds, Conley Street, Sligo, and Abbey Street, Ballina. 071 914 2673.
An invitation to all farmers to the special Connacht Gold Forum on Farming at the McWilliam Park Hotel, Claremorris, this Wednesday, January 27th at 7:30pm. Get the views of Ireland's leading experts and farm leaders on prospects for milk, beef and sheep. Get the latest on cap reform and the future of the single farm payment. And get updated on the economy and prospects for recovery. The Connacht Gold Forum on Farming at the McWilliam Park Hotel, Claremorris, this Wednesday, January 27th. Don't miss it.
Quayside Shopping Centre and Special Olympics Connacht presents Our School's Got Talent. If you're a secondary school student in County Sligo, then this is your chance to showcase your talent. Are you a singer, dancer, comedian, magician or juggler? You can share in our €5,000 prize fund. Auditions are in Quayside over next 2 weekends. Application forms available now from your secondary school or the Special Olympics office, Wine Street, Sligo.
Final clearance sale at Simone's Hybrid Sligo. Full length winter coats from €150. Wool jackets and cozy knitwear from €49. Special occasion dresses from €50. Big sale clearance rail, trousers, jackets, skirts and tops, 20, 30, 40, 50 and €60. Biggest ever reduction of quality labels. Mother of the bride and groom outfits from €200. Final clearance sale at Simone's Hybrid Sligo.
Claremorris Motor and Machinery Auction every Wednesday at 8pm. ESB and Aircom Vehicle and Machinery Sales Saturday 6th of February from 12 noon. Inquiries to 094 937 1684 or visit hanleysales.com.
Imagine YMAX cuts your aircon bill in half and saves you over €300 a year. Sligo is now YMAX certified. Call Imagine now on 1890 929 006. Terms and conditions apply.
To have your say, call the Northwest Today comment line on 0818 365 500. Text your comment to 083 3500 530.
And you're very welcome back to the programme. We are in the company of Gabriel McSharry, medical nutritionist and herbalist here in the studio. Now, just some of the questions that are coming in. Firstly, can you take too much honey, Manuka honey, that type of honey?
Yes, you can. Too much honey. Like, honey is a simple sugar. It gets absorbed very fast and so on. And it can, if too much of it, can spike blood sugar levels, and that's never good. And I guess depending on the amount of exercise one is doing and so on, you could take a few spoons a day, but I definitely wouldn't exceed. It's equivalent of a spoon of sugar, a heap spoon of sugar. So you really want to keep that to a minimum. Okay. But Manuka used medicinally is really good,
All right. What can be done about high levels of potassium in the blood?
I'd reduce it in the diet. Find out which is high dietary sources of potassium and limit it. The likes of bananas now are high in potassium.
Really?
Yeah, and some of the nuts. And as far as I know, they're the most bioavailable sources that I mentioned. But I'd have a list at the clinic, and so if you have high levels in the blood, generally reduce the foods containing potassium. And you could also look at consuming the certain herbs you can consume as teas that increase the excretion of potassium. And these are ones we monitor with people with things like hypertension, because if you go too low in potassium, your blood pressure can shoot up and so on. So, there's herbs that can keep it low as well.
Okay. Now, high cholesterol. Diet for high cholesterol.
Yeah. Look, the whole high cholesterol in the diet, heart disease link, when you go back and read all the research, it's a very, very weak link. And that's quite shocking to a lot of people. We produce cholesterol in the body in our liver. We need cholesterol, first off. It's really important. It's important to produce new cells. It's important to produce new hormones. It's important to repair damaged tissue. It's important for brain and heart function. So we need it. The body doesn't produce anything to kill us. Mm-hmm. Now, generally, it's about 2/3 of the cholesterol that we need we produce in the liver, and the other third we'll take from diet. If you reduce it in the diet, you'll just ramp up the production in the liver. As simple as that. So going on low cholesterol, low fat products is a poor solution. And in my opinion, ones that are made, like avoiding cholesterol altogether in the diet.
Have you seen these drinks that are lower cholesterol, these butters, these whatever, lower cholesterol?
I'd avoid margarines. They're poor products. And generally contain trans fatty acids. There's certain spreads that claim that to lower your cholesterol, and how to do it is they add plant phytosterols to them, and they do by binding cholesterol in the gut. And if you want them, you get them from vegetables and herbs. That's where they exist in nature. Mm-hmm. There's no need to get them from a spread. And a spread that can potentially be bad for the heart, so these margarines or anything that contains trans fatty acids is bad for the heart and the cells and needs to be avoided. Your best butter is the old-fashioned block butter.
The real butter.
The real butter. It's full of fat-soluble vitamins and activators, and there's no trans fatty acids in it, and it's a natural product. So all the spreadables and definitely all the margarines and Cook-X or all these kind of heated vegetable oil products should be avoided. Anything with trans fats should be avoided. Go to natural fats. So we know that natural fats from the research, a good quality cod liver or olive oil can increase what we call the good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. They're not really cholesterol, they're actually proteins, but HDLs are what's seen as the good thing to keep high, LDLs are the bad thing to keep low. And what increases the HDLs is a good quality olive oil. So pour it on the salads, don't heat it up. If you heat it up or fry with olive oil, it's going to denature the fats in it. You shouldn't fry with olive oil. Just pour it on salads and keep it cold, Flaxseed oil is another great oil. Cod liver oil and fish oil. All these are very beneficial for that ratio of what they call good and bad cholesterol. So omega-3s.
And what about diet? What you're eating? Like some people say, too many eggs. Some people say too much fried foods. Red meat, whatever. Yeah,
well, let's take them in order. Eggs, no, they're good for you. Eggs are really good for you. They contain cholesterol, but again, what I started off with, the whole connection between dietary cholesterol and heart disease is very, very weak. So eggs are a natural food and very good for you. Consume fried foods, yes. So anything that's done in heated oils are bad for the heart, and will be knock-on effect bad for cholesterol and stuff, because you're heating the oils to a high temperature, generally vegetable oils, and they oxidize, and then they turn into free radicals in the body, these trans fatty acids. So avoid them. Boiling is the best. Steaming is also probably better, or as good, or the second best. What was the last one you mentioned?
Meats, red
meats. No, they're fine. Stay away from processed meats. Yeah, so salamis and sausages, anything where it's processed. But if you stick to normal meats, cuts that you get from a butcher, fine, perfectly fine.
So all that type. And what about fish and stuff like that?
Brilliant. Better. Fatty fish is great. Again,
what do you mean by fatty fish?
Well, herring and mackerel are probably there's some fish that have more fat content.
Really?
Than others, yeah.
So you're talking about herring and mackerel would be better to eat than would it be
more healthy.
Than cod and
definitely.
They're more healthy.
Yes.
And people are inclined because of the little bones or whatever, I suppose, in the
there is a downside, but they'd have more of the, I guess, the omega-3s, and they're the big one here. That's great. It's very protective against heart disease and so on. So the key with the whole cholesterol thing is to eat a diet that's good for your heart, because let's look at the bigger picture here. That's what the number is being checked for and trying to get down. It's all to do with reducing heart disease and keeping the health of the vascular system robust. So eat foods that are really good for the heart and the cardiovascular system.
This listener wants to know, what would you use to fry with if you're frying?
I'd use lard. The old-fashioned lard.
The old-fashioned lard.
Yeah,
a block of lard.
Yeah, 100% is a pork fat. Not so. There is just the warn. Well, lard only came back on the shelves, funny enough, about 4 months ago. But before that, it was ones under different names that would kind of have 70% pork fat and then 30% the vegetable oils, and you should avoid that. So go for 100% animal fat. It's saturated, so it's solid at room temperature, and it doesn't oxidize on heat. That's the thing. So you don't get the trans fatty acids. So it's what we used to use years ago. And then it just fell out of vogue, and saturated fats became vilified, and everyone moved to vegetable oils. But it was a poor transition. And now we see in New York, they're kind of the flagship at the minute. They've banned trans fatty acids from New York City, all the restaurants and fast foods by 2012. So next couple of years they'll have to be out. And what are they're moving back to lard. So they're moving back to stuff that doesn't oxidize and turn into trans fatty acids.
Okay. And just before I let you go, this listener wants to know, will green vegetables such as cabbage help lower cholesterol?
Yeah, well, again, as I mentioned, plant phytosterols will lower cholesterol by binding to it in the gut, and you get them in plants. So vegetables.
Any vegetable, like your carrot, your turnip,
Generally. There's some better than others, and we've certain herbs then that have a fibrous mass that do it as well. But your green leafy vegetables or whatever the caller mentioned there was a cabbage. Brilliant.
Cabbage.
Brilliant.
Okay, right. We have a lot of questions in here. Unfortunately, we won't get to them this morning. But what we'll do is we'll come back to them next week. But also, we are starting our mother and baby feature on the show next week. And as part of that, Gabriel, you're going to be talking to us about women who would like to have a baby, preparing to have a baby, and about their diet and their health and all that, what they should be taking while they're pregnant. And all.
Definitely preconception care. Nutrition, diet throughout pregnancy and lactation.
Okay, so we're doing that next week. Gabriel McSharry, medical herbalist and nutritionist. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning.
Thanks very much.
Join me, Des McAleer, 11 to 2 a.m. on the Love Cruise on Ocean FM.
That's the Love Cruise, 11 to 2, Monday to Friday. Ocean FM. Ocean FM. Keep it local with Centra. We deliver great value, allowing you to shop locally, save time, save money, and support local jobs. Check out this week.